here to talk about breastfeeding, um, just to share my experience with breastfeeding because right now we are thinking about how we're going to feed the baby. I did breastfeed my daughter, my oldest daughter, Adri, and I just want to share experience that we had. Um, and I want to say some of the benefits that I have and some benefits that are researched. First, I want to say that I am not an advocate for breastfeeding. I'm not against formula feeding in any way. Breastfeeding is what worked well for our family and for our lifestyle. And formula feeding is perfectly okay. There's benefits from formula feeding too. And if I wasn't able to breastfeed, I would formula fed. It's important that babies are eating. It's not important. It's not as important as, oh, you have to breastfeed or you're a bad mother because you're not breastfeeding. So let me get that out there. I'm not against formula feeding at all. Breastfeeding is what my choice was for my baby, and it worked for us. So with that being said, we are planning on breastfeeding this baby that is due in January. And I say planning because you never know what could happen that will prevent you from breastfeeding. It could be something medical, or the baby could be born early, which I don't want, but that could happen. Or the baby won't latch, or the milk won't come in correctly. There are a lot of things that could inhibit breastfeeding. So if anybody is thinking about breastfeeding, take those into consideration and have a backup plan, which is formula feeding. And don't be totally against it, because even though breastfeeding is natural, it is still challenging, and everyone can't do it. And I was lucky enough that I didn't have any issues with breastfeeding my daughter, and we breastfed her for 18, well, not we, I breastfed her for 18 months, and about 2 weeks after I found out I was pregnant again, then I weaned her. And I think I would have let her breastfeed for about up to 24 months. That's my cutoff. I don't want to go past 2 years, but I would have let her breastfeed longer if she wanted to. So I'm going to do this video in parts, so if it seems choppy, I'm sorry. So when my daughter was born, they cleaned her up, and then immediately after cleaning her up, we latched her on to breastfeed, and the nurse was there, and so she breastfed well the first time she did. When newborns are born, though, they're not really getting any milk. They're getting more of the colostrum. I think that's what it's called, colostrum, and that is like this thick substance, and it's like filled with proteins, carbohydrates, and antibodies, I think, to help the baby boost the immune system. And it's easy to digest, so it's like really good for the baby. It's really good for them, and their stomachs are only the size of a chickpea when they're born, so they don't need a lot. And so after that, it was good. The nurse, there were a lot of lactation nurses helping me, and they kept coming in, and they would help me latch her on. So with them helping me, it was okay. But when they didn't, then it was really hard for me, because I couldn't latch her, and when I would try, she would not open her mouth. And when I did get her latched on, it hurt. And so since I didn't have her latched on correctly, I just started getting a lot of pain. And I wasn't feeding her as often as I was supposed to. They wanted me to feed her like every 2 or 4 hours or something like that. And I wasn't feeding her that often because it was difficult for me, and it was hurting. So they would come in and ask me, has she eaten, or when's the last time you tried to nurse her? And they were getting on me about nursing her, because I would just let her sleep. And it was just so hard in the beginning for me to latch her on. But okay, I've written some things down, so that's what I'm looking at. But she was getting something when they would help me, she was getting something because she had bowel movements. So that was important, that she was getting something. So she must have been getting colostrum. She wasn't getting milk. My milk hadn't come in yet. And the other things I tried to do, because I didn't know what I was doing. So I tried pumping. I didn't realize that I didn't have milk. So they got me a pump. I tried pumping. Nothing came out. We tried giving her a syringe, and we placed it by the breast, and it had formula in it. So I could get the hang of that. So she was getting a little bit of formula, and they kept telling me that it was important to get nipple stimulation for milk to come in. So that's what I was trying to do, and it was still painful. It was still uncomfortable. And I started getting really discouraged and depressed. I don't think I cried in the hospital, but I was just like, can I do this, or should I just breastfeed? Because it was really challenging, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't do any research before I breastfed. I only remember my mom didn't breastfeed me or my sister after me, and there's 5 of us, but she breastfed the last 3, and I remember her breastfeeding them. That's all I remember. I didn't do much research, and I did hear that was the benefits. I knew the benefits, and I knew the benefits for the baby and me, but I didn't research about how challenging it could be, or there could be, I couldn't breastfeed and I'll have to formula feed. So the day we were going home from the hospital, I remember that Adri was crying and she was hungry, and I was so frustrated because I knew she was hungry and I knew she wanted me to feed her. And I didn't. I tried to. I waited out, and I wanted to wait to get home to try, and so I couldn't. So I had to stop. I was getting her dressed. I had to stop what I was doing, and I tried to feed her. There was nothing coming out, and I don't think she was satisfied. I think she was hungry. She was eating her shirt, and she was just crying and crying, and it made me so. It made me really sad because I couldn't latch her on correctly, and she wasn't satisfied, and she kept crying. And so we just went home, and that was how it was at the hospital. I had a lot of help from the lactation nurses. They told me so many techniques. They gave me techniques, but I couldn't get the hang of it. I couldn't get the hang of it quickly enough. We even took breastfeeding classes, but it's nothing like being in that moment and experiencing it. I mean, they tell you everything that you need to know, but they rarely tell you how hard it's going to be. So that was the hospital, and I'm going to talk about when she came home, so I'll be right back.